The ratings are in for AEW's Summer Blockbuster that aired on TBS and Max on Wednesday night. Chaos emerges when it comes to TNA Impact last night after Trick Williams gets involved in a main event on TNA Impact. Tessa Blanchard is cleared and returns in an 8-4-1 match on Impact that was eventually won by Killer Kelly, earning an opportunity at the TNA Knockouts World Championship. Leon Slater will challenge for the X Division Championship at Slammiversary. The Inspiration are victorious in their in-ring return on TNA Impact. Santana suspends Mike Santana for 2 weeks and ejects Robert Stone to kick off Impact last night. Several matches and segments are confirmed for next week's edition of TNA Impact. TNA Impact will once again be broadcast live in July from Rhode Island. Several AEW stars are set to appear on the upcoming revival of American Gladiators hosted by WWE superstar The Miz. An injury update on Bianca Belair after she suffered broken fingers at WrestleMania 41. Details of the Young Bucks match at AEW All in Texas. And several matches and segments are confirmed for tonight's edition of Friday Night Smackdown. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there are plenty of news stories to get into in the world of professional wrestling. Before we begin, you can see right there, we're currently at 22,384 subscribers. So if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe and join the ever-expanding WNU, that being the Wrestling News universe. In addition, you can become a member of the WN365 roster. You can scan that QR code right there on the sidebar, click the link in the video description or the join button. You get your badges, your emojis, and your exclusive members-only content. Now, let's begin with AEW's Summer Blockbuster, of course, a 4-hour show across Dynamite and Collision on Wednesday on TBS. Now, AEW continued on their road to All in Texas on July 12th with another huge week of action in the form of their Summer Blockbuster TV special on June 11th. Much like Fyter Fest 7 days earlier, the show was once again split into 2 parts, with the first 2 hours being AEW Dynamite, while the second 2 hours were AEW Collision. But across the whole show, fans saw a host of major events. Will Ospreay and Swerve Strickland wrestled to a time limit draw. Kazuchika Okada made Kenny Omega cough up blood, and timeless Toni Storm picked up another big victory over Julia Hart. And when it comes to the Dynamite portion of the show, let's begin with that. For the Dynamite portion of the evening, WrestleNomics has been able to confirm that the show averaged 597,000 viewers. That is a 9% drop from the previous week's 655,000 viewers and 6% below the trailing 4-week average of 637,000 viewers. In terms of the quarter-hour ratings, these come courtesy of WrestleNomics. Shout out to them, and be sure to subscribe to their Patreon service. You can see both the Dynamite and Collision quarter hours. We'll talk about Collision in just a little bit. Now, the show kicked off with 672,000 viewers, a figure that remained consistent throughout Ospreay and Strickland's 30-minute match, dropping 618,000 in Q2, but bouncing back to 662,000 by the end of Q3. Following that, it was a steady decline as the show went on, with the Dynamite closing angle between Okada and Omega having 517,000 live viewers. In terms of the 18 to 49 demographic, the first 2 hours posted a 0.17 number, down 6% from the previous week's 0.18, but up 6% on the trailing 4-week average of a 0.16. This was enough to put the Dynamite portion of the show approximately third in the primetime cable rankings, sitting only behind Fox News, with 2 of their 3 primetime hours taking the 2 top spots, marking a second consecutive week where AEW has ranked in the top 3 in their primetime cable rankings, a feat that hadn't been achieved for a number of months. Now, when it comes to AEW Collision, though, the Collision portion of the show, it was certainly much more of a mixed bag for AEW. Now, knowing the show was starting at 10 p.m. Eastern and likely finishing after midnight on the East Coast, the Collision portion of the show was always going to struggle, as it did during Fyter Fest on June 4th. However, I suppose it wasn't all bad for AEW, as WrestleNomics confirmed that the second 2 hours of the night averaged a total of 397,000 viewers, which is actually a 4% increase on the second half of Fyter Fest a week earlier, and 6% above the trailing 4-week average of 376,000 viewers. The top of the third hour, we can get into those quarter-hour ratings once again, courtesy of WrestleNomics. You can see them right there. The top of the third hour had 498,000 live viewers, and while viewership did go down in the next quarter, it ended up bouncing reverting back to more what the show started with the 10:30 to 10:45 p.m. quarter having 501,000 live viewers. With that said, viewership would gradually go down as Wednesday drew to a close, and at the end of the 5-minute overrun, Collision had 254,000 live viewers still watching. In terms of the 18 to 49 demographic, it didn't fare as well as the previous week, with Collision posting a 0.09 number, which is a 10% drop from the previous week, which posted a 0.10 number, but it is still a 12% increase on the trailing 4-week average of a 0.08. At the time of recording, it's currently unclear exactly where Collision would end up ranking in the primetime cable charts, as that information has not yet been released. AEW will return to their regular schedule next week, while still having a few alterations to what fans are used to, because the June 18th edition of Dynamite will be the Grand Slam Mexico special, and 2.5-hour show will be airing live from Arena Mexico, while Collision will be back in its regular time slot of Saturday night 8 p.m. Eastern, airing live from Kent, Washington. Now let's go over to TNA Impact last night. There was chaos in the main event. TNA World Champion and WWE NXT superstar Trick Williams incited chaos at the end of the June 12th TNA Impact. During the main event of the June 12th TNA Impact tag team match that saw Matt and Jeff Hardy take on Casey Navarro and AJ Francis, the ending of the match would see all-out chaos with many of the significant members of the TNA roster. Recently aligning himself with Francis and Navarro, Trick Williams hit the ring, joining First Class in attacking the Hardys. After that, the referee called for the bell, ending the match in a no contest. Joe Hendry's music followed, and he stormed out to the ring to get his hands on the NXT star who took the TNA World Championship from him. Elijah and Leon Slater would join the babyfaces as the entirety of the system also hit the ring. The show went off the air with Slater doing a plancha onto the heels. Now, earlier on in the evening, Trick Williams was featured on the First Class Penthouse talk show segment. They all bonded ahead of their 6-man tag team match against Elijah, Josh Briggs, and Yoshiki Inamura on the June 17th episode of WWE NXT. Now, Tessa Blanchard, she is medically cleared to return to the ring. TNA announced that Tessa Blanchard was indeed medically cleared. During the Bioflex injury report on the June 12th episode of TNA Impact, it was announced that Tessa Blanchard was cleared for action after she sustained a temporomandibular joint dysfunction during her match against Ariana Grace at TNA Under Siege. Now, she went on to compete in the match that, of course, was an 8-4-1 match, and it was won by Killer Kelly. Now, Killer Kelly returned to the TNA ring as well on the June 12th episode of TNA Impact, and she made the most of her return, earning a TNA Knockouts World Championship match against Masa Slamovich. Kelly won a 4-way match against Indy Hartwell, Tasha Steelz, and Jody Threat, securing a pinfall on Steelz. As per the 8-4-1 rules, the match started as an 8 knockouts tag and then turned into a 4-way with the winning team facing each other. Indy Hartwell, Killer Kelly, Jody Threat, and Tasha Steelz won the 8 knockouts tag team match against Tessa Blanchard, Zaya Brookside, Danny Luna, and Rosemary after Hartwell hit the Hertz Donut on Rosemary. Kelly versus Slamovich will take place on the June 26th episode of TNA Impact. Now, we know what the X Division title match is going to be at Slammiversary. After pinning Moose in an 8-man tag at TNA Against All Odds, Leon Slater gets the opportunity to challenge Moose for the TNA X Division Championship at TNA Slammiversary. Santino Marella announced the match at the opening of the June 12th TNA Impact. Moose is currently aiming to break the record for the longest reigning TNA X Division champion. He only needs to surpass the 298-day record held by Austin Aries. He is already the second longest reigning champion in the 23-year history of the title. Fittingly, Slammiversary is the event that celebrates the birth of TNA wrestling. The Inspiration, they're back in TNA and they were successful in their return to the ring. Cassie Lee and Jessie McKay stepped into a TNA Impact ring for the first time since 2022 on the June 12th episode of TNA Impact, taking on Brittany Brooks and Missa Kate. The Inspiration was successful, hitting the Idolizer for the victory. The Inspiration returned at TNA Against All Odds, confronting TNA Knockouts Tag Team Champions, the Elegance brand. Of course, it looks like they are destined for a Knockouts Tag Team title match at some point in the future. Santino Marella made some big decisions last night on TNA Impact. Mike Santana is suspended for the next 2 weeks. Santino Marella kicked off the June 12th episode of TNA Impact with a segment that took place earlier in the evening, where he revealed to Mike Santana that he was suspended for 2 weeks after what went down during the First Class Penthouse at TNA Against All Odds. Santana begrudgingly agreed. However, he made Santino promise that once he came back, he would have the opportunity to wrestle AJ Francis. Santino agreed and Santana went on his way. The segment also included WWE NXT superstar Robert Stone trying to force his way into the Impact Zone before Santana caught him and had security remove him from the building. Stone lost the opportunity to become the TNA Director of Authority when Santana defeated him at TNA Against All Odds. Now, an interesting match is set up for TNA Impact next week. TNA Wrestling announced a Champions Challenge for next Thursday, TNA Impact, with the 5 TNA Champions teaming up in an all-star tag. TNA Champion Trick Williams, TNA International Champion Steve Macklin, TNA X Division Champion Moose, and TNA Tag Team Champions The Nemeths will face Joe Hendry, Elijah, and the Rascals in a match. Plus, Eric Young takes on Sami Callihan, and Masha Slamovich teams with Li Ying Lee to face Ash and Heather by Elegance. Finally, Matt Cardona and a partner will take on Eddie Edwards and JDC. Now, another upcoming live episode of TNA Impact is set to take place next month. TNA Wrestling announced that July 24th's episode of TNA Impact will air live on Access TV. The event will emanate from the Ryan Center in Kingston, Rhode Island. A TV taping will be held the following night on July 25th. The July 24th episode of TNA Impact is the first episode following the TNA Slammiversary pay-per-view. TNA has aired multiple episodes of Impact live throughout 2025 thus far. Now, American Gladiators is coming back, and it's got involvement from WWE and AEW. It was nearly a month ago when word emerged of yet another American Gladiators reboot, with WWE superstar The Miz set to host the program, similar to how WWE Hall of Famer Hulk Hogan hosted the first reboot. After that, news was slow to emerge until a recent report revealed that former WWE superstar Rick Boogs and former TNA wrestling star Jesse Goddard would be 2 of several wrestlers set to take part in the reboot. As it turns out, some of those other wrestlers will result in AEW talent working with The Miz. The Hollywood Reporter reports that AEW's Wardlow and Camille, along with OVW star J-Rod, will be joining Boogs and Goddard as part of the American Gladiators roster. The report describes the wrestling stars as being there to keep the show's contestants in check. While the full cast for the list of the show was unveiled, no details were provided on when the show would air. Now, a bit of an update here when it comes to Bianca Belair and her return to in-ring competition. At WrestleMania 41, Io Sky, Rhea Ripley, and Bianca Belair delivered a critically acclaimed triple threat performance over the WWE Women's World Championship. Unfortunately, not all the participants emerged unscathed. Belair specifically walked out with a few broken fingers, which she later taped up on the subsequent episode of Smackdown. A new report has since provided an update on the timeline for her in-ring comeback. According to PW Insider, WWE officials are hopeful that Belair will be able to return to action by SummerSlam, which is slated for early August, if not sometime beforehand. Belair has largely remained off WWE television since sustaining her broken fingers. Still, she appears to be in good spirits, with her focus now being on healing and getting back onto SmackDown, which she considers to be her home, albeit a currently divided one. This divide particularly centers on Belair and her former tag team partners Naomi and Jade Cargill. Earlier this year, Naomi revealed herself as the person responsible for brutally attacking Cargill last November. Since then, Naomi and Cargill have traded a number of physical and verbal blows, while also interjecting themselves into each other's separate business. Due to her injury, Belair's planned involvement in their feud was reportedly adjusted by the WWE creative team. Now let's go back over to AEW and talk about All in Texas and a big match that was seemingly solidified on Dynamite this week. The Young Bucks attacked Swerve Strickland, resulting in his longtime friend Will Ospreay coming to his aid and taking a double super kick for him. Those that Fightful Select spoke to in AEW say the current direction for All In is indeed the Young Bucks versus Swerve Strickland and Will Ospreay. Sources familiar with each talent said that the tag team match involving the Young Bucks versus Strickland was on the table for quite some time. However, due to the creative of Hangman Page and Will Ospreay being kept close to the vest, Fightful had heard Ospreay's creative end of things was firmed up after AEW Double or Nothing. And finally, several matches and segments are confirmed for tonight's episode of Smackdown. The Rupp Arena in Lexington, Kentucky is playing host to Friday Night Smackdown this evening. It is the post-Money in the Bank edition of the program, and General Manager Nick Aldis added 3 names to the show's lineup. The new Miss Money in the Bank Naomi is scheduled to appear. Also on the docket is undisputed WWE Champion John Cena. This past Monday on Raw, Cena was confronted by CM Punk and only agreed to give Punk a title match if it happened in Saudi Arabia at Night of Champions. The match has since been made official. The reigning WWE United States Champion Jacob Fatu is also appearing. During the men's Money in the Bank ladder match last weekend, he prevented Solo Sikoa from winning by taking Sikoa out. But there you go, guys, the latest pro wrestling news for you. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, as you can see right there. We're currently at 22,385 subscribers. So if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe. Join the ever-expanding WNU. You can also scan that QR code right there on the sidebar and become a member of the WN365 roster. You get your badges, your emojis, and your exclusive members-only content. I appreciate everyone for tuning in, as always, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.